Welcome to the Stories of Starting podcast. I'm Heather Boyd. As a self-employed artist for the last 30 years, I'm fascinated with people's passions and creative projects. In this series, we discover how people like you have started new projects by thinking outside the box, going with the flow, and tapping into their childhood imagination.
So hey guys, it's take 3 of the interview with my sister. So she's back in Montreal wearing the same outfit as last time. I'm probably not, but it's all good. So we're going to redo our interview. And so Patti, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, I'm Heather's sister.
Yes.
And I'm born and raised in Ottawa and just living my life. That's all good.
That's it. So when I originally asked Patti to do this interview, she was a little hesitant because she wasn't sure she had a lot to say, but everybody has an amazing story, and Patti's actually has a really good entrepreneurial story, that she was an entrepreneur way before it was a thing that people talked about. I mean, people were doing entrepreneurial things, but now it's like everybody wants to do it. And so tell us a little bit about, maybe a couple of your first jobs and then how it led into your entrepreneurship.
Okay, well, I started off in high school and I worked in the Ottawa Public Library, which was awesome because I was introduced to a lot of new books just by putting them away in the shelves.
Cool.
And then after high school, I worked in accounting as a secretary of office manager. Mm-hmm. And that was really good because I became comfortable with taxes and doing my own taxes. And so later on, I started a sewing business, did that for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And then when kids came along and I was busy with young'uns, I started running a daycare, and it just meant that I was comfortable, collecting all my receipts and organizing them and keeping spreadsheets and filing my taxes and so everything just sort of worked together.
Yeah.
So I was comfortable with doing all of that stuff. So
yeah, I love how that works, and actually when we were in high school, they had a typing course, which actually, of course, doesn't exist anymore. But I know I learned a lot. My first job was as a secretary too, so that certainly helped with that as well. And with the daycare, I always had so much admiration for Patti with the daycare because it was not just a matter of like having a few kids over and entertaining them, but there was so much work involved. I remember going to visit and going for lunch at your place, and you trekking around all these kids with all the car seats, and the thing I think I admired the most about it was the discipline that you had and the routine that you created for the kids.
Oh yeah, definitely with young children it's important to have some kind of routine because there's definitely comfort and familiarity, and if you it's one of those things, if you show any weakness, even a little crack, they're all over you. So keeping things organized, they didn't question it, right? Because it was basically not the same every day, but there was a routine and structure for every day. And so, we would have craft time, and as they got older, I would have workbooks and stuff like that. And they may not have liked it, but they did it. They did it because that is just what we're doing. And then lunchtime, that was set in stone. So like Mondays perhaps was sandwich day, and Tuesday was macaroni day. And if I knew a child really didn't like something, then it would be like sandwich or something else day. And so that 1 or 2 children would get the one thing, but it wasn't, what do you want to eat for lunch? Because otherwise nobody would eat anything, because again, they would see that weakness that you couldn't decide. So
that's right. And it's funny because when we were growing up, our mom had the same sort of structure. I remember Monday was like poached egg, and Friday was scrambled egg, and all of these things, and so it's definitely interesting how you echoed that with the daycare.
Oh yeah. Well, you learn what works, right? And and you know what? I think even though kids like to choose things, and Fridays we always had it as whatever day. So that was the one day that we relaxed it a little bit.
Yeah.
But I mean, it also meant that I could plan for it. So Thursdays we had pizza day, and it was a whole morning activity. So we would start off, the kids all would help make the dough, and we'd put it up to rise, and then they would help make their own pizza. And then in between we would be doing crafts and stuff like that. And then we would, when it was actually baking, we'd do something else. And then they could take ownership over it, and they actually made it themselves. So they would become comfortable in the kitchen, but it kept the whole morning busy. And so there was no room for people just going crazy.
That's it. That's amazing. And so you did that for many years, what, 15 years?
15 years, yeah.
Yeah. And then at what point did you make a little switch and tell us, what you did to do the switch?
Well, it was at the point, my youngest would have been sort of late elementary school, and I just found that I didn't feel it was necessary for me to be home as much, and I was getting to that point where I really did want more mental stimulation, and so I just slowly eased my way out and started taking courses part-time. And then when I retired from the daycare, I went back to school full-time and took a course on internet programming, which really fascinated me because I've always loved maths and sciences. Ended up passing the course with a 99%, but in there the market crashed and they weren't hiring newbies anymore. But I was able to meet people, so you meet the people that introduce you to people, and that's how I ended up with Health Canada on a contract. And I've never looked back. It's I've met some wonderful people and that have guided me where I needed to go. So
that's it. And I remember this was long before I had any social media presence or if I don't even know what existed at that time, but you created my very first website.
I did, and I got top marks for that too. That was a lot of fun.
That was amazing.
Yeah, I got to play with. I sort of integrated a lot of our projects because one of them was, let's say, learning Flash, and so I made this little Flash video, and then integrated that into your website and your various photographs. So that was a really good experience.
That was amazing. And in those days, making a website was not accessible for the general public.
Well, it was all programming, right? Your HTML and your C++ and all that stuff. And now, could I do it again now? It would take research, but but it was a lot of fun when I started. So
that's cool. So now you work for Health Canada, and you get up very early hours to get to work. I'm still sleeping for a few hours after you get up, but the reason that you have an early start time is because you wanted to have one day off a week to devote to your granddaughters. So tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, well, it was very gradual. One thing that I'm very fortunate for within where I work is we have the option of working a compressed work week. So it started years ago. I compressed my work week a little bit, and I took, let's say, 1 week off, 1 day off every 3 weeks, and then it was 2 weeks. And then after my first granddaughter was born and my daughter was going back to work, I changed it. So now I work from 6 to 4, and I take every Friday off. And when Emily was at work, she was working Fridays and Saturdays. And so every Friday I would babysit Jane. And honestly, I remember the first day I had her and I was babysitting for the day. I sat there and I was watching, and it's like, oh my goodness, I only have one child to take care of. This is so easy. Because it all comes rushing back, right? It's just like, I can just devote all my time to this one child. So
that's cool.
That was a lot of fun. And then Lily came along a couple years later, so she's just turned 2. And Emily is still at home. She decided to stay home at least till the girls are back in school. And it's nice because now I spend the days with the 3 of them, except for Jane now is in school.
She's in school.
But then we get that nice balance. I get some time just with Emily and some time just with Lily and some with Jane. So it's and then some of us all together. So it's I cherish these days. It's it's just wonderful to have that opportunity. And I know I'm very lucky, because I know in a lot of jobs you wouldn't be able to do that. So
that's true. And Emily's really lucky because now she's moved out of Ottawa. They actually found a beautiful home in Arnprior to move to a smaller town. So it's a bit of a trek for you, but
it's about 45 minutes. And and it's a beautiful little town. I'm just totally in love. It's lovely.
And I'm going to link up below. Emily has a whole story about how she found this beautiful house. And so I'm going to interview her. She's actually cooking up, working on a project, writing a book. So when that's ready to go, I'm going to interview her. And but in the meantime, I'll link up that story because it's super cool.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And so also you do a lot of volunteer work at the Ottawa Little Theatre. So let's hear about that.
Wow. Now my history with Ottawa Little Theatre goes back to when I was 11. So that's what, 44 years ago, 45 years ago or something like that. And our parents started taking each of us. I think it was when we were about 10 or 11.
Yeah.
Until all 6 of us were there, and we did all the plays. And then as we grew up, I think Mom and Dad kept going.
Yes.
But then we were off doing our own thing. And then just slowly over the years, I got back into it. And Emily started coming. And then Emily was interested in the theater. And so she wanted to volunteer. And so she was only about, 13 at the time. So it made sense for me to be there too. And we started off by doing front of house, which is just handing out programs. And then I think her first play she worked on, she was a prompter. So they call it the position book. And I was working on props or something like that.
Cool.
And we did a few plays together. And then as she got into university and stuff like that, she was too busy, but I kept going.
Nice.
And so it was a wonderful learning opportunity. And it being community theater, all you have to do is show an interest, and people will teach you anything you want to learn. So I've done everything from assistant stage manager, assistant director. I've been trained on sound and lighting, props. I've done some sewing for them. My favorite is doing the period costumes.
Yes.
So I did one of the gowns for the Three Musketeers, and it was literally out of old curtain material. I felt just like Scarlett O'Hara. It was wonderful, except without the curtain rod. If you've watched Carol Burnett, but so it's I highly recommend it to anybody, especially if you want to either learn more about theater, meet amazing people, or it's just. It's been a really interesting ride. So now things are a little busier, so I still do my front of house, and once in a while I'll go on board, either just doing sort of, let's say, stage crew or dresser. I've been doing a lot of that, but I would highly recommend it.
Yeah, and then we went several times to see dress rehearsals of plays that you were assisting at, and very reminiscent of going as a child to the shows, and I'm pretty sure that's what instilled my sort of obsession with going out and going to live comedy, live music, plays, and it's definitely was instilled in us from a very young age. And you still go often with Mom, because you live in Ottawa. You guys go often to plays.
Well, we have seasons tickets at Ottawa Little Theatre and the Broadway series at NAC, but we always keep our eyes open. So we might go out to Canada for one play, or GCTC, or the Gladstone has a wonderful variety of plays, because it's more of a venue than a specific company, but then all kinds of different companies run shows there, including once in a while they'll do these radio shows. So it's actually on the stage, they're showing the people do the radio show, and you see the crazy antics they're doing with all everything they use for sound effects and stuff like that, and they're extremely funny, of course.
I love that, like behind the scenes type of thing.
Like the things you wouldn't see listening to it on the radio.
That's right.
But it's so much funny. It's so much fun.
Well, the other thing I got a flash of just talking about, going out with family was when we were younger, the parents used to play in an orchestra, music of Jacosa. And so that was another thing that we did often, to go either to the rehearsals or to their shows. Yeah. And they also played in musical. They played in the orchestra of musicals in Greeley and all that. Oh yeah. And you actually played in the orchestra for a while, right?
Did.
I just remember that now. I had totally forgotten.
I played percussion. That. It was amazing. Yeah. They actually had their own timpanis, and so I used to go and I'd pull them out of the big cupboard.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And I think they got me playing sandpaper in one, and maybe a typewriter or something like that. Like what is it, the Flight of the Bumblebee? They have various things, and then there's that one with the typewriter.
Oh my God, how long did you do that? Like a couple of years?
I have no idea. I think I was in high school at the time.
I don't
remember yesterday. So.
And one of the main things I remember about the orchestra was Mom used to make Nanaimo bars and bring them to the orchestra. Boy, I remember the food really well.
Yeah, her Nanaimo bars are incredible.
So something else I've always really admired about you as well is your sort of family involvement and family ethics and all the amazing things you guys have done. You did a lot of camping trips. You did a lot of kind of group activities. And something that you were involved with when the kids were younger was Taekwondo.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Which was so cool that you all got your black belts. Yeah. And so tell us a little bit about the Taekwondo.
Yeah, it was actually a good timing for that. It started off with Pete and the boys. They started that because Emily was quite young at the time, and she was doing ballet. gymnastics, I think.
Right.
And she was having fun with that, but I think because her dad and her brothers were off doing this thing, she started feeling a little bit left out, even though I would go with her and stay with her.
Yeah.
So anyway, and I think there was somebody picking on her in gymnastics, and because I know we had a few conversations about that. But on the other hand, I was always tried to be very careful not to just give the kids the opinion that they could just quit.
Yeah.
Right? Like they had to work their way through things. And I would always I wouldn't necessarily force them to go to the end of something, but there had to be a logical breaking point, but we weren't leaving because of whatever the situation was.
Right.
And so what we did is when Pete and the boys got their black belt, their first degree black belt, that's when I said to Emily, well, you know, if you'd like to join, we can go as a family. And so it was nice because then as Emily and I were progressing through the belt levels, we had 3 teachers at home, which was fantastic because they had put a lot of work into even deciphering the Korean alphabet, because you have to learn a certain number of Korean words, but also you had to learn to be able to write certain words. And it's a completely different alphabet, of course, because it's driven more by sounds. Like the shapes are sounds. It's not like you're memorizing one letter per our letter of the alphabet. It's more, these are the letters, this is how to make the combination of sounds. And so anyway, so that was a really interesting ride, because then as they were studying for their second degree black belt, Emily and I were studying for our first degree black belt. And for me it was perfect, because I had been running a daycare for a lot of years. And you don't necessarily get the same mental stimulation. I mean, I love working with the kids, don't get me wrong, but your brain gets a little bit mushy after a while. So it was really good for me, because physically I was getting a lot of more structured exercise, but also the memorizing the patterns and the words and the terminology and stuff like that.
Cool.
So I found it very helpful. And so I think I was just, because everybody started giving it up as they got into other things, right? Because Stuart was getting into the Air Cadets, and Travis and Pete stuck around there longer. I can't remember what it was Emily was getting into, but then I went back to school, and so then that was a natural break for me, because when I start something, I tend to like to be 100%, and I can do really well, and then get into the next thing.
That's it. But you definitely milked it for all it was worth, because you guys even went on a trip, right, for a competition? What was that?
Well, the boys were in a Taekwondo demonstration team, and Pete was one of the coaches, and so they did competition in Montreal, and through that they were invited to compete in a Pan Am Games down in Anaheim, California. And so of course Emily and I go along too, right? Because what else do you do? So it was fascinating, because we stayed at the Disneyland Hotel, and the competition was in the Disneyland Hotel. And I said, yeah, guys, I'll videotape it, no problem. I pushed the wrong button and nothing worked. Oh, no. Luckily, other people were taping too, but this has not necessarily always been my forte.
That's it. But you had the experience.
We did. It was a wonderful experience.
So thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Oh my God. You're very welcome. Thank you for inviting me to Montreal again.
For take 3, that's right. And I'm going to definitely link up some photos of Patti's beautiful work, her costumes, and maybe some old photos of you and the family and stuff, and your Taekwondo. And is there anything else you'd like to share with people watching?
Just congratulations on, this is such a fabulous idea, because a lot of these things, in my own experiences, you just sort of forget, and then you're bringing these up, it's like, oh my goodness, I did that.
It's amazing.
So it's a lot of fun, so thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. No, everybody's got such interesting stories, and we all inspire each other, and that's how it should be.
Excellent.
Good. So bye everybody, we'll see you the next time.
Thank you.
So that's amazing that every Friday you get to hang out with your granddaughters and pick up Jamie at school and stuff.
Oh, it's so much fun. I just love it. Come on. Go, yay! Hi!
Hey! Wow,
just say hi to the
look
camera.
at we're just filming a movie. Can you say hi?
Hi, say hi.
Nelly, say hi.
Hi,
girls. Do stuffing like that and...
Hi, camera. Lindy, say hi to the camera. Say hi, camera.
Thanks so much for tuning in to Stories of Starting. If you would like to inspire others with your story, big or small, be sure to reach out via storiesofstarting.com. Until next time, always remember, your story matters.